I get this phone call from General Bowden, and he's like, hey, Major, I need you to, I want you to, you know, think about, we're about to launch this campaign. Would you consider it? And I knew it was coming, but it's $1 billion. At that time, they thought it was going to be $1 billion campaign. I literally thought he was asking me to find him somebody to run it because of my work in career services, and I knew all the people. I was like, well, General, what is it? Like, who was the skill set? Was the job? I don't even know what this job does. He's like, no, I want you to do it. And I remember taking the biggest deep breath, and I said, I'm going to have to call you back. Yes, sir. Because he's, you know, of course, I hang up the phone, and my father works in professional baseball at the time. So I called my dad, and I said, I think I just got called up to the big leagues. Like, oh no, I don't even know what to do.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, my name is Andrew McClendon. I'm your host of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. We're recording from the Propel Productions podcast studio here in Baton Rouge, and we're joined by our guest, Miss Beverly Brooks Thompson, Managing Director of Carter Global. Beverly, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So it seems like you have led a pretty fascinating life in the research that I've done about you. And I think it has a lot to do with how much you've done over the years. And I just kind of wanted to rattle off some of the things that stand out to me. So Number one is your education. So 4 degrees from LSU.
Go Tigers.
Yeah. And your career, which is very, very interesting. And you've had some huge accomplishments, which have led to the start of your own business and philanthropy leadership, in which you've made a significant mark in that industry. Recently, an adjunct professor at Southern University.
And LSU.
Yeah. And politics, run for Senate in 2019.
Someone do the, like, off the page. I went a little crazy and ran for office.
That's how it usually goes, isn't it? But also recently in 2021, a political appointment by Governor John Bel Edwards to the Louisiana Board of Commerce and Industry.
Yes.
Which is really cool. And then some nonprofit board service along the way. And on top of all that, a wife and a mother of 4.
That's right.
And I mean, that's just like, how was that all even possible? Because when I look,
I'm old, Andrew.
Yeah. And so when someone asks you to tell your story, where do you start?
Oh gosh. I was raised in Houston, Texas. Yeah. And I generally start, I guess, when I came to Baton Rouge. I came to LSU and was very excited to do that. Go Tigers. I walked on that campus and it felt like home, and it still does. Clearly, I've spent a long time there.
Did you live on campus?
I did. I lived in Blake in the summer of 1988, and my potluck roommate is still my very best friend, Kim Ewing Park. My mama, she's a serial entrepreneur too. My mama's kitchen out in Nero is the best food on the planet.
Oh, really?
But fell in love with Louisiana, married a Louisiana boy, no longer married to him, but just Louisiana wrapped its arms around me, and I've been so blessed. And every time I've tried to leave, it just keeps luring me back home.
So you not only went to LSU, you went to LSU a lot. You had the 4 degrees that I mentioned, right? But you also worked there. You had several jobs
I did.
at LSU. So how did that all blend in? I mean, you went to school, and so kind of talk us through how that process worked.
Sure. Well, I very notoriously failed out of school. And when I was probably a sophomore in college, apparently you have to go to class to get a degree. I was not a particularly good student, but I had just some incredible experiences. I worked for Gus Piazza. A lot of people knew Gus, who had Phil's Oyster Bar when he had a white tablecloth restaurant over on Highland Road. Yeah. I was his assistant manager. And if you knew Mr. Piazza and or Anthony now, I mean, just a fascinating microcosm of the universe. So I had such an amazing opportunity to meet people from all walks of life, including the president of LSU, who took a real interest in me, Alan Copping. Took a real interest in my future because he knew I had failed out and I was waiting tables and managing the restaurant, and super kind. Well, I had the ability to go back to LSU, and knowing what I know now, I would never meet the cut. And I'm relatively positive now, if I hadn't had the recommendation of, Alan Copping, I probably would not have been so successful. But
I think that's interesting. I mentioned to you before the show that my father was worked at LSU. He was the dean of College of Design for 20 years, and a lot of architects, landscape architects, and artists pass through that program.
The best in the world.
And there's stories that I've heard back about, similar stories where these students had failed out of school, mm-hmm. and yet I think that's a sign of a great educator, where they take the
absolutely,
the responsibility, and they have the passion to re-engage you. I mean, education is everything.
All of the things.
And I've had people come up to me and tell me, your dad got me back in school, and not even necessarily in LSU. They would say,
absolutely.
Maybe failed out of LSU, but look, get back in it, go to this school, and then, take it
navigate your way. Well,
so
and I think
people
have to know that they can do it, right? And so one of the gifts, I think, of LSU is it was a place of second chances for me. And I was so blessed. And Dr. Copping, I'll never forget, said, let your work speak. Because I certainly didn't have whatever the quality points or that sort of thing. I remember sitting in junior division, and I'm still friends with the counselor today. And they were like, is your dad like the governor? How did you possibly give a kid? And I had just, reapplied, whatever. But what I now know is there are probably some guardian angels sitting on my shoulder. Yeah. And so my journey through LSU, I graduated in general studies, go, Tigers. And I was the president of the general college back in the day. So I got into some leadership there and had some people say, hey, would you like to do this? We think you'd be great at that. And so a big university can be a great big small place. But if you let your work speak, it has been a blessing.
So you then started to get a job at LSU as well?
I became a student leader, and I graduated, and I have a minor in human resource management. So I was interviewed by a wonderful person who happened to be married to a firefighter. So my ex-husband is a firefighter. And, another person tapped on the shoulder, said, I'll give you a chance. So I went to work at Sunburst Bank, Union Planners Bank, and Human Resources. But during that leadership time at LSU, I had met some people in the Career Services office, which are they're the job placement people and people to tell you what to do with your life. And still an incredible organization. They helped me figure out, what are you going to do with this general studies degree and the skill set and that sort of thing? Well, a woman named Mary Delahousie Bello had taken interest in me, and a position came open while I was at Union Planners, Sunburst and Union Planners, and she said, I think you should apply. Well, I came in second for the job. I interviewed and I came in second. I was devastated. So I had spent a couple of years in the HR field, and they wanted me to run the internship and cooperative education program, which was a job that did not exist. So although I came in second, and that's why I say it's a place of second chances, I got a phone call about 2 weeks after I didn't get the job, all, brokenhearted about that. And from Dr. Frank Carney, who was the head of career services at the time. Mary worked with him. And he said, we were so impressed with you during this interview. Would you be willing to start this position? And so, absolutely. Well, one of the things when I was in the general college, if you were in general studies at that time, you could not get an internship if you were in mass comm. So I wanted to be sitting behind a microphone like this. I wanted to be in radio or television, but I couldn't get an internship because I wasn't one of the majors.
I see.
So I used that to my advantage, I guess, and wanted to eliminate obstacles, paths for success, and met with all the deans. And we got an internship program in every curriculum, worked with cooperative education. And because of that, I met the most fascinating people, because alums are the ones that come back and recruit. So I basically recruited alumni to come back and recruit students. And because of that, I met some of really LSU's most illustrious alums, which eventually led to where I am now, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So career services at LSU is connecting with the alums, bringing them back in and setting up interviews for...
Absolutely. For students, finding students, part-time jobs, internships, cooperative education, and full-time placement. So it is a centralized office at LSU. It still exists, and it's in the LSU Union now.
Now, you had another position, but then you ended up going back to career services, right?
I did. So, gosh, that's so, nobody ever notices that. So I went to work and this is really a testament to people looking out for you. So I wound up working at career services. Then the next director was a woman named Dr. Mary Fiducia. And Mary and I are still close friends. And one of the reasons is because I interviewed for another job at Career Services, and I came in second. I wanted to be in charge of employer relations, and I came in second, and I reported to Mary at that time, and she had seen a position across campus. So I have this background in the performing arts. I used to be a singer. That's how I actually came to LSU. I was on an opera scholarship. Who knew? I know, right?
I didn't.
I can't sing well. That's why you've never heard of that. At any rate, Mary knew I had this just love of the performing arts and kind of all the pieces. And she said to me, she came to my office, and imagine if your boss comes to your office and says, I think you should apply for this job across campus. I mean, you take it a little like, oh gosh, this is not a good thing. Are you trying to get rid of me?
Yeah.
No, but she positioned it perfectly. She said, I think this is the perfect next step for you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I really think you have the skill set, and it was not a job I would have reached for at that time. Well, I applied for it and I got it, and it was such a great job. I booked all the Broadway shows and plays that came to campus
you were,
in that position.
Assistant director at the LSU Union.
Mm-hmm. And that's really, at that time, was over all the leadership positions, like all student leadership stuff.
But that building in and of itself, and what happens in that building,
it's amazing.
It's really
Yeah.
And I don't pretend to know a fraction of it, but just reading about some of it,
It's like, extraordinary.
That must have been an incredible opportunity.
It was. So we were over all of the student leadership development programs that weren't student government, although student government was in the building. So you have kind of the judiciary of student process. And then over here in the union, you had the people booking the film series and the performing arts and all the concerts on campus, the Black Culture Committee, the International Student Committee. All of that was under the Union Program Council at that time, and I wound up working there. So booking Broadway shows and plays and comedians back before he was famous, like Jimmy Fallon, came to campus. And back when 13th Gate was at LSU, I mean, how much fun to take Jimmy Fallon through 13th Gate, right? I had no idea who Jimmy Fallon was at the time, right? We booked concerts, and I'm the least hip person in America. People will tell you, like, I don't know any of the pop culture cool stuff, but like the Goo Goo Dolls, I had them in my car because I had to pick them up. But I got to meet people like Maya Angelou and Gloria Steinem, and how amazing.
Fantastic.
Which was great. But they don't do Broadway shows at noon on Tuesdays. And I wound up having 2 little boys, and Mary Fiducia called me and said, how would you like to come back and be the head of employer relations at Career Services? What a gift. I mean, I had the greatest job on earth, but I was given more money and I could work a more normal schedule. And so I had some guardian angels once again, like Mary was looking out for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun. I still miss that job. That was still my favorite job.
You know what struck me when I read about that job was the fact that, you know, at the university with 30,000 students, you have students from every imaginable culture.
Yes.
And like, how does that come into play when you're trying to create programs? And I mean, it just struck me like, oh my goodness, there's a lot more to that than
it was. Thank you. So I learned so much in that world. I had the opportunity. It was probably one of the biggest learning opportunities in my career. You see student leaders and student leaders from all walks of life. So they have jumped through every hoop or hurdle to be student leaders, and, you know, cream rises to the crop.
Right.
Well, one of my dear friends, Annette Yancey, worked with me, and she went to go be a counselor somewhere else, and she had overseen the Black Culture Committee and the International Culture Committee. She's an African-American woman. An amazing family, very prominent in Baton Rouge, and they put me in charge of those 2 committees. Well, I am white and young, and now in charge of the Black Culture Committee and the International Culture Committee, and I am geographically challenged at best. So I don't look the part, but I know the job. Like, I know how to fill out the forms and make sure you have the catering, and my job is to develop student leaders. Well, there were some folks on campus that were really took me under their wing and said, do the job, but know what you don't know. Well, at a state institution, that looks one way, but in particular cultural situations, that looks a very different way. So one of my very dearest friends today is a woman named Emilia Gilbert.
You have a lot of friends.
I do. I do.
Pick up on that.
So Emmy is now at the Baton Rouge Chamber, but she was 18 years old, and she was the head of the Black Culture Committee at that time. And the students weren't real excited that I was there. And my graduate assistant looked just like me, and redheaded and freckled. She was an African-American woman. She just, if by looking at her, you would not presume. And again, they said, know what you know. Well, learned so much, had administrators really go to bat for me. in that you know this job, but you don't know these things. So get real comfortable being uncomfortable. And the students learned along with me.
That's
we formed the
fantastic.
Black Student Union. We hired Catrice Albert, who is now one of the world's leaders in diversity, equity, and inclusion. She worked at the NCAA. She's internationally known. You know, I like to brag and say, I hired Catrice at LSU. And I did, but, you know.
So
it was
it did
amazing to learn.
It sounds like it. Did you? Is that where you kind of started getting into fundraising efforts?
So really at the union, yes, because we didn't have enough money to rub two nickels together. We had to put programs together for, you know.
But it seemed like the budget started. It seemed like you started to raise more money.
When I got back to career services, the real impetus for raising money, and I always say I'm not a fundraiser, I'm a problem solver. So when I went back to career services and employer relations, I realized very fast that one of the things that may stand in a student's way was if I don't have $10 to register, I might not actually get a job. If I don't come from a wealthy family, then I can't go intern in Washington because I have an unpaid internship. So barriers to access started becoming very transparent to me in the have and the have-nots. And do you have people that were tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you look like somebody that could do this work like I had?
Right.
So I realized that the disparity of that, and I started to solve some problems. So I started asking, hey, could we, raise some money? And employers were saying we would pay a premium to be at this career fair in the front row. So I said, let's start a star employer program where the companies pay for this and it's kind of tiered, and we'll use that money. And I thought it would be great if we would raise $25,000 because that would cover all of the student registrations for a year. Well, fast forward, and about 2 years later, I got a phone call from the Vice Chancellor's office saying, could you come to the Vice Chancellor's office, please? And you understand university hierarchy. That's like 5 jobs above me. I thought I'd gotten called to the principal's office. So I go over to the Vice Chancellor's office, and he said, can you explain these accounts? So at the union, there was a pretty significant amount of money because we had raised a little bit there through program sales and whatever. And then at career services, there was about $250,000, $300,000 in account. And I thought I was in trouble because apparently if you have money in a university account, they notice at a higher level. Right. And he said, what are you doing over there? And that's before you had a fundraiser in every department. And he said, would you be willing to come do that for the division? And that was the LSU Union and Rec Sports and Greek Life and all of those things. Well, sure. So had the ability to go do that. And
now, is that external affairs?
That's external affairs. And gosh, you really did your homework.
I did.
So I worked in student life, which is essentially everything that happens outside of a classroom in leadership development. They're always the redheaded stepchildren, so to speak, of a university because they're not the academy, right? Money generally goes to academics first, as it well should, but you have these demands for things like career services or counseling or disability affairs or all of those things. They said, would you be willing to start raising money?
Yeah,
and
which certainly has a great impact on the quality of life for the
absolutely,
student, right? So,
without question.
So
and I was really lucky.
It has to balance the academic side of.
That's right. Yeah. So there were some folks over in the foundation that had worked with me in career services and in corporate and foundation relations. And I noticed you have a foundation, which made me really happy when I walked in. Thank you for that. But one of the gentlemen in corporate relations realized that I knew a lot of the alumni. So if he wanted to talk to somebody at Shell, he would say, Beverly, who do we know at Shell? Beverly, who do we know at Halliburton? Who do we know at WBRZ? Because I knew them either from being a student leader or because they had intern or, come back to recruit. Well, fast forward, Katrina happens. And sitting in external relations in student life during the largest field hospital operation in world history was a really interesting thing, because on the 10th day of classes, we had 400 families living in the dorm, not just students, right? We had to feed people. And that is fundraising in reverse. We have this 18-wheeler coming in full of dog food. Can you logistically help with that? So I think me and about 1,000 other people showed up and were helping, but because of where I sat, some people took notice that I was a problem solver. And you just show up and do the work.
Because you were, right?
You are the problem solver. You just get things done and you make things work. Well, that fast forward, some other people took some notice at that. And I got real lucky in fundraising in a couple of years in student life. We raised a lot of money on.
Let's pick up from that when we get back from this break and get in a word from our sponsor. And we'll be right back. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location. Just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work in retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. They're experienced, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Beverly Brooks Thompson. It seems like in that last job you were talking about external affairs, like that's where your fundraising got kicked up a notch. Is that?
I would say, yeah. I got really lucky. One of the things that I think I am good at is being an advocate with people who are better at the job than me, if that makes sense. So I knew in that particular position that we were secondary to the academy, to everything that would happen academically. And I had shared some of the folks that were in corporate and foundation relations took an interest in who I was and who I knew, but also because of that, I was able to share with them, hey, this leadership development program really feeds into this. You want student leaders. You're not just going to find them in a classroom. This is where you find them. So I was able to advocate for some of the programs that we did, which really brings a different conversation to the table with people who are having those conversations. I wasn't necessarily in the room, but we raised some pretty significant dollars that way for programs other people wouldn't know about, one of which was the Stripes program at LSU, which is kind of the LSU indoctrination program.
So it seems that has to be driven by passion.
Absolutely.
Right? So when you first mentioned identifying where there were the have and the haves and have-nots, and then how you could make something happen for
eliminate obstacles and barriers to access. That's what I say. Like, if there's an obstacle or a barrier to access and I can go over, under, around, and through and find a way to get there, I will find a way to get there. Yeah. That happens to be fundraising to me. Right. There's not a lot of problems money can't fix.
Yeah,
I've figured out.
The other thing that's kind of interesting that I heard you say is that, when you were called in and they said, where's this money coming? What are y'all doing over there when you had that $250,000 in the account? It seems as if that was a new process that you were doing in connecting with the alumni in that way. And
absolutely. I'm sure I was breaking some rules, but not not on purpose. It was, hey, we have this problem and these people have an interest in this. Can we marry those two? And some of that was very entrepreneurial. Nobody had ever done that, even in the country. We didn't have peers in the country. I was one of 5 people in external affairs and student life at that time. There weren't a lot of people doing that. So that was in the beginning of big time fundraising on campus. So we were making it up, which is great.
Which led to your next gig, which was big time fundraising.
So it was. What I know now is I would take the job if I were offered that position today. Knowing what I know about fundraising, I would have asked much better questions. And I would have known I was absolutely not qualified for the job. So very, very...
and the job was?
Being the director of Forever LSU. So I got a phone call from Major General Bill Bowden, who is just one of the most incredible men on the planet. He was a brigadier general in the Marine Corps. He ran Camp Pendleton, and he was the president of the LSU Foundation. He retired, and they hired him to be the president of the LSU Foundation. And his counterpart was Major General Ron Richard at the Tiger Athletic Foundation. So those two gentlemen, I think, when they were in the Marines, one ran Pendleton, one ran Camp Lejeune, were over 3/5 of the United States Marine Corps at one time. Well, these are guys that get stuff done. And both of them are like 6'4". They're just giants in the world, but they're also physically just these huge guys. So I'm not exactly short. Well, my last name was Major at the time. And Sean O'Keefe, who was the chancellor at that time, I had gotten to know, and they had seen my work in employer relations. And I think I was just kind of the girl Friday in their book, to use an old term, like, call Beverly. She'll know. She'll at least know who to call, right? So I get this phone call from General Bowden, and he's like, hey, Major, I want you to, think about, we're about to launch this campaign. Would you consider it? And I knew it was coming, but it's $1 billion. At that time, they thought it was going to be $1 billion campaign. I literally thought he was asking me to find him somebody to run it because of my work in career services, and I knew all the people. I was like, well, General, what is it? Like, who was the skill set? Was the job? I don't even know what this job does. He's like, no, I want you to do it. And I remember taking the biggest deep breath, and I said, I'm going to have to call you back. Yes, sir. Because he's, of course. I hang up the phone, and my father works in professional baseball at the time. So I called my dad, and I said, I think I just got called up to the big leagues. Like, I don't even know what to do. So at any rate, I took the job. I was so blessed, but I had no idea what I was doing.
I mean, no staff to start with?
No.
Nothing?
I mean, there were probably 10 or 15 fundraisers in campus units, but he wanted me to direct this campaign. And I'm young enough and, frankly, broke enough. So I was a single mom. My boys were 5 and 6, or 6 and 8. They asked me to do this, and I was like, okay, this is going to be more money. I get to work in a place with these incredible people because I knew a lot of the people in the foundation. I thought, okay, well, when the president calls you, the chancellor of the university, the president of the foundation, you don't say no. Right. So, okay, here I go. Packed up my stuff. And one of the political stories I tell is my boys helped me move my 18 boxes from Johnston Hall in the basement over to the second floor of Lod Cook with the best view on campus. And my son asked me, Mom, what are you going to be doing? He's 8, maybe. Yeah, 8. And I said, well, we're going to raise like $1 billion. And he had gotten a scholarship that morning. Brennan had gotten a scholarship at St. Aloysius. And he is a very, very bright young man, but he didn't get it because he was bright. He got it because his mom was a single mom and broke. And I explained, I said, you know how you got a scholarship at St. Aloysius? So you could go. I said, we're going to raise a lot of money. So if somebody wants to go to LSU and they don't have the ability to do that, they don't have the money to do that, then they'll get a scholarship just like you got a scholarship this morning.
Oh, my goodness.
So the next morning, he walks into my room with his piggy bank. And it had $86.47 in that piggy bank. And he says, Mom, I want somebody to go to LSU. Oh. So I figure if somebody gave money for me to go to St. Aloysius, maybe I can do the same.
Oh, how cool.
So, excuse my getting choked up, but philanthropy is taught. And it has nothing to do with money. So we kept his piggy bank on my desk the entire time. And I told those fundraisers, I was like, there's an 8-year-old that believes in you. And he's now 24 and has graduated with honors from LSU. But, you know, that's what it was about. It wasn't about like all of the cool stuff that we did, because I got to meet amazing people and go amazing places and big gifts. But the most important gift of that campaign was $86.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a great story. But you built a tremendous team there, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we did.
So it seems really complex, if I read this right.
Okay, you want me to boil it down?
Well, it seems like you were taking, yes, I do want you to boil it down, but it seems like you're taking you're fundraising for LSU, A&M College, the law school, Paul M. Hebert Law School, and the Ag Center. At
that time, those were 3 separate campuses, contiguous to the university, but they were 3 separate campuses. So we had 3 chancellors, and we had 3 foundations.
Which was?
TAF, Tiger Athletic Foundation, the LSU Alumni Association, and the LSU Foundation.
Okay, so
I was the only person that worked for all of them. I had 6 bosses.
That's amazing.
It was great.
Okay, so boil it down for us.
Okay, so at the end of the day, we were charged with raising $750 million for the university. And the brand of that was Forever LSU, which was the last 2 words of the alma mater. Right. And that is a really terrific story. So I'll tell you that here in a second. Back before June of 2006, nobody really knew what Forever LSU was. I mean, that wasn't in the vernacular like it is today. But we were charged with doing that, and that money was going to go to student support, scholarships, faculty support, professorships and chairs, really campus infrastructure. So the college business building that was built, that was part of that. The Tiger Band Hall was part of that. The north expansion of the stadium, along with a whole lot of other things, including Mike the Tiger's habitat, was part of that. The Equine Center at the vet school. So it was really 17 little mini campaigns inside of a campaign, but it was a $750 million effort. And it was very, very, very heavy lift, because we launched that campaign with only $251 million counted. And what I know now is you would never launch a campaign without over half of your money raised or more and counted. But it was right after Katrina, Rita, Gustav, and Ike. The need was astoundingly great. I mean, it was just huge. And Sean O'Keefe believed in LSU bigger than LSU believed in itself. Now, we talked him out of a $1 billion campaign. But, you know, we launched that campaign at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and James Carville very famously said that evening, there is not an institution in the country that needs its flagship more than Louisiana needs LSU. As goes LSU, so goes the state of Louisiana. And at that point, that was absolutely the truth. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to James Carville for always wearing his LSU hat everywhere he goes. And it was proof that you could bring adversaries together for a common cause. So Congressman Henson Moore, who was the ranking Republican at that time, was the chair of the campaign, and James Carville, who political, not in the same room together, joined hands, sang Kumbaya, and we raised the money, $798 million.
So you exceeded it.
We did.
Significantly. So I know we could talk for a long time about that period of time.
Yeah.
But if you try to boil out a couple of stories of either major victories, you're able to land some of the largest individual gift to LSU.
So that was a team effort.
Sure.
For sure. The largest
How big
gift
was your team?
So the enterprise of fundraising at that time was probably 80 people, and that included all of Tiger Athletic Foundation and all the Alumni Association and all of the LSU Foundation. Boots on the ground fundraisers was about 30. Now, a campaign of that magnitude, and the campaign that LSU is in, I am not a part of except for as a donor, is a much larger operation. To run a $750 million campaign, if a client were to call me today and say we need to do this, that is easily 150 people generally. Goodness. So we were scrappy. Wow. The campaign office was 2 people. At Auburn, the comparable campaign office at the same time for a comparable campaign was 11 to 15. So we had a lot of very, very dedicated people inside the organization, as well as volunteers that really, like Congressman Henson Moore, who showed up to work every single day for free to really carry the flag, or as I would say, pack Memorial Tower on their back and carry it across campus. So we had an extraordinary team of volunteer leadership that really helped with that. But we also had people very, very passionate about the institution. So the largest corporate gift in history, I think, is what you're alluding to. We had folks like Shell give $3.5 million and Chevron $4.5 million. And, you start doing that and Exxon gets competitive. So they, they come together as alums. And so the momentum was there. And given the timing of the state, people were really, really rooting for Louisiana. We wanted to feel good about something. And football was doing really well.
Yeah.
Right? And Tiger Athletic Foundation made up easily $350 million of that campaign. And a lot of that was facilities, but people are passionate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some of the bigger wins were smaller wins. The biggest gift was Emma and Tony Stevenson, which just an incredible couple. They gave to the Stevenson Entrepreneurship Program and Disaster Management Program. And part of that was the response to Katrina. They were watching horrified at what was happening in Louisiana and wanted to make that better. That was the team of Karen DeVille in the College of Business and, some just amazing people. I have the luxury of carrying the business card forever LSU. People like Karen DeVille did the heavy lift and the real work of working with all of those folks. I was just air traffic control.
Well, a very important job.
Yeah, it was fun.
Congrats on that success.
Yeah.
But it seemed to have helped put you in a national spotlight in a way in that field of philanthropic leadership.
I think it did.
How did that play out for you?
So I had the benefit of a lot of people rooting again for LSU because of that. I think knowing what you don't know is a big part of my success. I knew I absolutely did not know what I was doing. So I asked a lot of questions. I surrounded myself with people who did. I was very open, I think, about that and authentic about that.
Doesn't it seem like that authenticity is really at the root of
absolutely
of your success. And in other words,
absolutely,
you said more than once here that you're maybe out a little over your skis with this, but I think
I'm always out over my skis for sure.
Well, I mean,
but I admit it. I think
when I'm hiring someone, I'm not as interested in their resume as their attitude towards problem solving and the things that you've talked about. So it just seems to me that that's what people with a tremendous amount of success and experience identified in you. Absolutely.
It's funny you mentioned that. I looked around the leadership team at LSU, at the LSU Foundation specifically, and really at Tiger Athletic Foundation. And I looked at General Bowden one day because I really saluted General Bowden because the academic portion, the leadership was really under that piece. And I asked him, I looked around his leadership team and every single person was under the age of 40. Now at 50, that looks astounding to me. At 40, I didn't think anything was a big deal about that. But think about that. The CFO managing $800 million was 37. I'm running a campaign at 37, 38. The marketing person in charge of one of the largest branding campaigns in the country at that time was in her 20s. The chief investment officer was 38. I mean, it was an extraordinary experience. And he said to me, I said, how are you doing this? He said, I'm used to Marines that are 22. Well, Marine generals and the former Secretary of the Navy, who's the chancellor, they said we have to look at what people can do, not what they have done. What a lesson in leadership. So curiosity, hustle, hard work, skill set, giving people the right tools to do their job and getting obstacles out of their way. What incredible masters of leadership those generals were.
Love that. Let's take another quick pause here, Beverly, get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. We would like to thank Gear Train for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. Gear Train is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. Gear Train also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. Gear Train technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to Gear Train. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Beverly Brooks Thompson. And so, Beverly, ultimately, you were very successful with the Forever LSU program.
I would say we
for sure
were.
But the phone started ringing, right? You got some national recognition with that.
I did. I had some folks reach out, and in the last year of the campaign, and it's easy when you're, doing press releases for things all day, but the last year, my life changed a little bit. I got married again, and Pursuant Catchum called. Catchum was the oldest fundraising firm in the United States, and I knew their work. They had just gotten acquired by Pursuant, which were kind of the young and hip cowboy guys, if you will, in all of the digital space and fundraising. Awesome. And I knew them, and they had done a small project for us, and I knew them. It's a great, big, small industry. You go to a conference, you rip off and duplicate, you look at other people's stuff. And so they called and they said, hey, we'd really like you to consider coming to work with us. And it was the right time for me. The campaign was over. I felt like we had done what we said we needed to do. My life was in a different place. My husband was like, if it doesn't work, do something else. And that previously had not been an option for me. You know, I was coming from really a place of scrappy scarcity. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I could do this. So a little confidence. Went to work for Pursuant, and
they're out of Dallas?
They were out of Dallas, and they still are, still a great firm. And I guess the good news, bad news is 6 consultants left the week before I got there. And some of the people that I really thought I wanted to work with, and that is important here in a minute, but I went to work for Pursuant and just had an extraordinary experience. I had clients all over the country, from Sun Devil Stadium to the Carnegie Science Museum in Pittsburgh to the Pratt Institute in New York. And so that experience, one, was like drinking from a fire hose, and I had several of the best mentors in the country as far as teaching me how to do it, how to do this consulting thing. But it was also very validating, I guess, because I didn't know what I was doing before. And we literally did it by the textbook. We had called every other SEC school, visited with them. How do you do this? What did you do? How did you avoid mistakes? We had done our homework. So it was validating in knowing that now that I'm in the world of fundraising, I did know what I was talking about, and I could help people. And that was great. I had amazing clients, but I was traveling. I spent 180 days on the road. And one of the things I learned...
In a 2-year stretch?
In a 2-year stretch. And it was a lot because I had high school boys, and it's real hard to be a mom to high school boys to begin with. But I was becoming a disruption when I was home, as opposed to being away, being a disruption. I was like, this is not good. I was a newlywed living out of a suitcase. Well, I had the opportunity to come back and go to work for a woman's hospital. And I've always said if I could carry 2 business cards in Baton Rouge, one would be LSU and the other would be Woman's Hospital, because they're the 2 best brands and incredible places. And I actually still feel like that. And to have the opportunity to work with Terry Fontenot, who is just this formidable leader in our country, not just in Baton Rouge, was a gift. And working on that leadership team, they asked me to form the foundation on the good work that Lynn Weil had done. And I came back home and I was able to do that. And it was just a beautiful experience. Spent several years there, and we formed the Foundation for Women's, which is still in existence. And I realize now I'm a serial entrepreneur. I just do it working for other people. So usually the phone call starts, we would like you to do this ... thing that nobody's ever done before, or, make it bigger, faster, stronger, whatever. Well, I did that. And then I realized that I had done what I said I was going to do, and now I had to manage it. Well, in consulting, you have all of the you have all of the authority and none of the responsibility. I like creating. I'm not a great manager. I love working with people. I'm not great to work for. True. So I had done what I said I was going to do. I loved the brand. I could still work there. But I had 2 or 3 clients from Pursuant call me and say, we miss you so much. Please come back. Please come back. Please come back. Well, I have some friends who are entrepreneurs. Devin Lemoyne is one of them. Meredith Eicher is another. Nick Spire. And I asked them, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? So I was doing my homework once again. And those that didn't think I was completely crazy were like, here are the things that you need to think about. And so one of the things Devin at Success Labs said to me was, if you have 2 contracts, you're in business. Well, I had the opportunity all at once. The universe had 3 contracts show up in my world saying, we would really like you to do this. And they weren't light. These were big.
Nice contracts.
Like if you're going to leave, some people leave an organization and they say, we're going into consulting, which is code for they got fired and they're going to go do whatever. And that wasn't the case. And it was actually a really difficult conversation to have, because I loved Woman's. I loved working for Terry, but I had this other,
as well.
I could have retired in that job, and it was amazing. And I still am such a huge fan, but I felt called, and I didn't have a better word for it, but I felt called to do this.
To start your own business.
To start my own business, but also to undo what I would say the shackles of only doing something in this box. I wanted to do something on a bigger scale. And so do good, period, better became our tagline. And so my friend Stafford Wood, another female entrepreneur, I was like, okay, these are all the things that you would need to do, like to do this. And so I was so blessed to have people say, this is how you build, this is how you do a contract. And I reached out to a gentleman named Bob Carter, who I had never worked with, but he had been the managing director at Ketchum. So I had followed his work and been trained by all his people. And he's like, if you're really going to do this, do it like this. Now, I didn't pretend like I was going to be competition to him and his company, but if you're going to do it like this. So, it's a small industry. I had some clients, which was great. I had enough at that point to pay myself for at least 6 to 8 months, which was a breath. But I did not understand the concept of entrepreneurial terror until that point.
Tell us about that.
So that's a real thing. And actually, a friend of mine just in the last month is starting her own business, and she's like, this is so horrifying. Like, I feel like I'm going to be in trouble if I'm not working. I'm at the, like she was getting her nails done on a Tuesday at 2. And I was like, oh, you're experiencing entrepreneurial terror. What is that? Well, I have boiled it down to this. It's all on you, right? It's the waking up every day. And I'll never forget Nick Spire asking me, did you start your company to sell it, or did you start your company for it to be a legacy? And I'm like, I just want to pay my mortgage next week. Like, I don't know. I wasn't that thoughtful about it, but those are questions. What I realized is that it boils down to you have 3 things in a business. You have to sell the business. You have to do the actual work, and you have to work on the business, which is the billing and the whatever. People are generally good at a 2 out of 3, and you need to know which ones, and you better hire for the others. Right. Well, it turns out I don't like to balance my checkbook, my personal checkbook. I don't like to balance my business checkbook. I don't want to pay the insurance. All the things that I hated doing as a manager, like the budget, like the HR forms, which is ironic given my background, I don't care if your cat threw up and you can't show up for work. I'm not great at that in a business. I am great at selling the work. And I'm pretty good at doing the work. I'm not great at running the business. Well, the terror comes in that it's all on you. Yep. You have to pedal faster, stronger, that sort of thing. Well, thank goodness I am surrounded by people who I could pick up the phone and say, do I bill by the hour, or do I bill by the day? Do I bill by a project? And admittedly, some of those could have been competitive, but they were willing to have those conversations with me. And I now will do that with anybody who will ask. Fast forward, I had more business than I knew what to do with. And it still is terrorizing, right? Because
you were selling.
If you're busy working the business and you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no pipeline, then you got to do that. And then you're selling the business like, oh crap, I haven't paid my taxes. What do I do? So just getting the flow of that in the first couple of years was big, but I didn't realize until it was validated with some other entrepreneurs. They're like, wait, what? You did what your first year? You did what your second year? And got some really good advice. Put people on a 1099. Don't put them on your payroll. hire them by contract, hire them. And that was amazing, right? So being able to do that and realizing, oh, I can hire somebody to actually balance QuickBooks, that would be great. And understanding that about myself, well, I think at the beginning of the day, going into that, just making the decision even to launch a business, two things happened. Those two contracts, people knocking on the door was a big thing. Right. And I think if people are coming to you asking for advice in a particular area, you're probably pretty good at that.
Right.
And if they're willing to pay you, ask them. Say, what is that worth to you? What would you do for other things? If you have two of those contracts, that's a thing. Then you're in business. The other piece of that is, what is your safety net? And as stupid as this sounds, I had been the president of the foundation at Women's Hospital, and I had the education or whatever on paper. I was recruited for jobs, JOB, with other people all the time. But I didn't think I could launch this company. And my husband said to me, he's very pragmatic. He's like, you get recruited all the time. If it doesn't work, get another job. That had not occurred to me. Yeah. But if the company doesn't work, you could actually go do something else. You're not a failure if you don't like being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I think that's a common thought process because you're so invested in your project.
Yes.
That
it's all of you.
Yeah, you can't see beyond that, which is probably works as a benefit for some entrepreneurs. If they thought there was a plan B and an escape route, they might take it earlier than
I'll tell you what, the only reason I made money is because I didn't think there was an escape route, and I was paying college tuition, right?
You had to make it work.
I had to make it work.
Not an option.
But the relief of saying, oh, I guess he's right. Maybe I could put my resume back into the workforce. So that was an important thing to go, if you're smart enough, you could do something different. Okay. So let's go.
Bob Carter came calling. Again, right?
Yeah. So, I went crazy in 2018 and decided to run for office.
You ran for Senate
District
16?
I did. Senate District 16 and picked that district pretty deliberately because it was bookended by LSU and Women's Hospital. And I had participated in a program called Leadership Louisiana, which is just an incredible opportunity. And the first day of that, they had a session and this guy said, sooner or later, you're going to get pissed off enough to run for office. He told the group this, and I was like, I will never run for office. 2014, we'll never say never. At any rate, I did get sufficiently pissed off enough to run for office, and I don't regret that decision. But as it applies to the business, I popped up a Senate logo in October of 2018, Beverly.
On social media.
On social media. Now, truth be told, save and share on Facebook are two different words. Oops. We accidentally shared it on a Sunday afternoon and had viral is probably the wrong word, but it had over 500, really? Is this for real? And it didn't say state Senate. People were like, what are you doing? Well, I got a phone call from Bob Carter and he said, what in the world are you doing? Now, this is a man who is a hero to me. I don't know. I've never worked really for him. I know him. He has mentored me a little bit. But
he's a legend.
He is a legend in philanthropy. He managed Ketchum for 25 years. He's one of the founders of the World Health Foundation. He sits on the board of Johns Hopkins. World Vision. He's the guy. You want to get an expert on Forbes about philanthropy, he's the one that you interview. And he's my friend, but he's like, what are you doing? People that are in our philanthropy fundraising space do not run for office because you have to be chameleon-like.
Right. They don't want to know what
they don't want to know. They want you
is.
to think you're running whatever organization you're working for office, and you just agree mostly with them. So he asked me a bunch of questions about my business, like, how's it going? And he's like, hey, if you ever decide we'd like to have a conversation with you, if you need cover, was kind of his word. If you need cover as you do this, good for you. Well, it turns out Bob's wife is a politician, so he knew exactly what I was going into. She's
in other words, you were going to...
Yeah. He's like, you're going to need some backup. Like, you're going to spin business to us, or if you've got more than you can handle, let us know. Because we are a team at Carter Global of independent consultants working under an umbrella. We are part of a team. So by February, that probably conversation sped up. But I asked him, I said, Bob, why do people come to work for you? Like, why do they become part of this as opposed to what we call a single shingle, or being me with 5 or 6 contract consultants? And he was like, well, people are good at one of 3 things. They like to do the work, they like to sell the work, and they don't like doing or they like to run the business. If you like running the business, you probably don't want to work with us. If you like selling the work and doing the work, no problem. And if you want your name on the letterhead, the letterhead's already taken. But if not, if like your ego wants your name to be Brooks Thompson Consulting. And I was like, I am so over that. And if I don't have to chase money, i.e. bill people and pay, like, worry about the insurance payments, done. So regardless of the running for office, I am among peers there, and I get to work with literally the best in the world at what we do. So and it was a smart decision. It was a sped up, easy decision in 2019 to...
So a bit of a merge.
Merge-ish. Not in a legal term, but essentially I negotiated every single contract with them. The folks that were contract with me had other things, which worked out really well. My assistant came, and it's been one of the single best decisions ever. I have all of the responsibility and none of the authority, which is great.
So it's really fascinating.
All of the authority, none of the responsibility, said the backwards.
Yeah. So it seems interesting to me to watch how your career grew in that industry, which is a mystery to a lot of people.
Sure.
And to do philanthropic leadership at such a high level. And
I get to work with some of the greatest people and organizations in the world. It's amazing.
There's so much to talk to you about, Beverly, and we only skim the surface on some of it, and which is why I started by saying you seem to lead such a fascinating life. Oh. All the while, you got a PhD, and you raised a family, and political efforts, and you've been recognized. You're doing nonprofit stuff. So as we wrap it up, I just want to tell you that we could talk for a lot longer, and I really appreciate you sharing your stories with us.
Wow, thanks. One of the things that I think has driven my career is curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm a curious person, and I think to be an entrepreneur or a fundraiser, you have to be curious about people. I think the other piece of it is I've dedicated my life to really serving other people in ways that eliminate barriers to access. And I just want the world to be better.
Yeah.
And if that takes my skill set into this universe, whether it's an entrepreneur or working for an amazing organization like a LSU or a woman's, then so be it. But I'm just going to keep showing up and doing the deal. I'm curious, and I want to help people.
Yeah, I love it. Fantastic story. So thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Well, thanks for having me. What fun.
Yeah, it's a blast.
I get to meet cool people.
Yeah.
Right?
How about that? So look, continued success with Carter Global and everything that you do, and I'm sure we'll see your name on the political spectrum?
Oh, you will not see me in the political spectrum. I'm more than happy to support somebody running for office wanting to do good stuff, but I don't see that in my future. But I would be remiss if I did not thank you for the work that your foundation does, serving people with disabilities. What an incredible thing.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. We absolutely love it, and we're going on about 15 years now.
And it's the greatest joy.
It's just...
It's the greatest joy.
It absolutely is. And
people don't get what I do. They always say, gosh, I couldn't raise money. I don't raise money. We're in the joy business. Yeah. It's doing something really amazing for somebody. So thanks for bringing joy to somebody.
Thank you so much. Okay, I appreciate it. And we will wrap it up there. Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you.
For someone who's built a career in philanthropic leadership, it's interesting that Beverly says she's not a fundraiser, she's a problem solver. And it's no surprise that she considers her superpower networking. I think the key to Beverly's career growth has been authenticity and knowing what she knows and what she doesn't know. I love how she learned some major entrepreneurial lessons from some very impressive individuals, including the story she told about the major generals, where she'd hire people for what they can do, not for what they have done. Also, in identifying the parts of the entrepreneurial process that you're good at, selling the work, the doing the work, or running the business. So a lot of gems in this episode. We really appreciate Beverly joining us, and we appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.